If you're a founder or business owner looking up how to build a responsive website in 2026, this video is intentionally designed to slow everything down and make the process feel calm, logical, and achievable. You don't need to be technical, you don't need to know design theory, and you certainly don't need to know how to code. What you do need is a clear mental image of how modern websites are built and the confidence to make good decisions without feeling overwhelmed. So go ahead, open up your tool of choice. I'll be using Wix Studio, and let's create a brand new site. In 2026, the biggest shift in website building isn't new technology, it's accessibility. The tools have matured and the gaps between DIY platforms and fully custom builds have significantly narrowed. The real difficulty now is not building the site, but choosing the right approach, the right structure, and the right tool for where your business is today. Now, before we talk about tools, layouts, or design, let's clarify what responsive actually means. So, a responsive website is one that intelligently adapts to how people browse in real life. That means mobile-first behavior, layouts that reflow naturally, readable text without the need to zoom in, buttons that are easy to tap, and content that feels intentional on every screen size. So within Wix Studio, there are so many tools at our disposal to ensure that we're building something that's responsive. So to begin with, we've got breakpoints. These are different sizes for our canvas to ensure that we're building something that would work on each individual device. Beyond that, there's also a way to preview how, when we resize the content and our screen size varies at each individual breakpoint, our content is going to respond. And you can see here how my page is adapting to these different sizes. Now, as you go ahead and build out your website, you're going to want to make sure that once you've done your desktop design, you then go through to tablet and mobile and just ensure that the layout is good. And I'll talk a little bit more as we go on about how to do that. This is important because responsiveness is no longer optional. The majority of your visitors will see your site on a mobile screen first, even if they later convert on a desktop. If your site feels awkward, cramped, or confusing on mobile, you've already lost the trust before a single word is read. A common misconception is that responsive design means shrinking a website down from desktop. Now that's really outdated thinking. True responsiveness means designing a flexible system that rearranges itself depending on context. So to show you an example of this inside Wix Studio, this is a website that I previously built. Now we've got a slightly unique layout here for the hero section. We've got a nice big full screen image in the background that always needs to make sure that it takes up the full width and height of the screen. And then our copy is laid out in a slightly different way to most kind of website layouts, where we've got the title on the left-hand side and then that following few lines of copy on the right-hand side. So it's really important that as the screen changes size at each individual breakpoint, that we can still see all of these elements nice and clearly, and also that they respond as the screen gets bigger and smaller. So for the desktop breakpoint, you can see as I increase and decrease the preview size, everything remains in view, everything scales proportionally so we can always see things, and this just works for the size, right? So when we're on a desktop, we know this is what we're going to get, and we know that the user who's experiencing this particular site is going to see all of the elements nice and clearly, and the behavior of the site allows them to have a good experience every single time. If we then go and take a look at the mobile breakpoint, you'll see there's been some significant changes to how this has been laid out to reflect that change in the available space and the significant change in effectively the size of the screen and the canvas that we have available. So where before we had the title on the left-hand side and then that following little block of copy on the right-hand side, now we've got that stacked one on top of the other just to allow it to actually all be displayed. Because if you could imagine how it would look with the text now taking up 50% of the width of the screen on the left and then the remainder on the right, we'd have very, very little room to play with. It would be very, very cramped. So you can see here, I've not just taken the layout from the desktop and shrunk it down. You need to be quite strategic with how you rearrange elements to ensure that when the screen size changes, or whichever device a user say comes to visit your site on, that your site responds to that intelligently and always displays your information nice and clearly to effectively not ruin your conversion rate or your user interest with something that's poorly designed. And this is again where Wix Studio offers a really good range of tools to help you remain in control of how that approach is handled. So if we just hop back to the desktop breakpoint and select the main hero section, if you come over to the right-hand side, you'll see a section here called responsive behavior, and that's just within the design panel. Now, responsive behavior tells Wix Studio how to control the behavior of every specific element on your site as that screen size starts to change. So you'll see here, as our screen gets smaller and bigger, that background image always fills 100% of the height of the screen and 100% of the width of the screen. So quite simply, the responsive behavior for this section is fit to screen. However, with our text, you can see that it's set to scale proportionally. And as, again, we alter the size of our preview, you can see that that text scales in exactly the same proportions that you can see it on the canvas. And what this means is once you've designed something that you're happy with, you can just guarantee that no matter what size the screen is that someone's viewing your project on, they're going to be able to see the content nice and clearly. And again, the same goes for mobile. So if we jump back down to our smallest breakpoint, we've still got that text set to scale. And what this means is as that screen size changes, we're going to grow and shrink that text in line with the size of the device, ensuring that it's always in the same proportions to how you designed it. Okay, so we're not just shrinking things down. We're not just taking the desktop website and making it small so it fits on a mobile screen. We're intelligently adapting our site to reflect the experience that the user is going to be having on whatever device or medium that they approach our website through. Desktop, tablet, and mobile are not just different screen sizes, they're different modes of use. Now let's talk about the first major decision you'll have to make, choosing the right tool. This choice has a knock-on effect on everything else, including cost, speed, quality, scalability, and how easy your site is to manage in the future. In 2026, website platforms broadly fall into two camps. On one side, you have simplified builders that prioritize speed and ease, but sacrifice structure and long-term flexibility. On the other side, you've got professional platforms that prioritize control, scalability, and collaboration. This is where Wix Studio fits, and it's important to frame it accurately because Wix Studio is built for designers and developers to do professional level work. But it's also designed so that business owners are not locked out once that's done. That balance is critical. If you're building the site yourself, Wix Studio is approachable once you understand the basics. You don't need to code, but you do get proper responsive controls, layout systems, CMS functionality, and performance tools. Now inside the studio itself, you can actually build out sections really easily. So if you wanted to put a section between existing sections or add them to the end of your existing website, clicking add section will do exactly that. So I'm just going to show you how easy it is for you as potentially a non-designer or developer to go in here and start to build within Wix Studio. So if we click add section, you'll get a choice between specific layouts, adding elements straight away to a blank canvas, or choosing from pre-designed sections. Now, I've said this before and I'll say it again, if there's a template to take that suits your business, this is kind of effectively a bunch of problems and decisions that have been solved for you. So why not? If there's something that works for you, if we click in this design section, there's so many different layouts and sort of concepts here for building out your site that already will be responsive from the get-go, right? So if you're trying to build a responsive website and you're perhaps completely new to the concept, there is absolutely nothing wrong with selecting one of these predefined sections, bringing them in and adjusting the copy, content, fonts and colors and the imagery to ensure that it ends up fitting with your website. If that's not for you and you wanted to build something from scratch, Wix Studio is as simple as this. Click add element and we're going to drag and drop it onto the canvas. So quite frankly, what you see is what you get with Wix Studio. If I was to publish this now and just show you a quick preview of the site, it looks exactly as you expect it to. So it's a very flexible tool. You can start bringing things onto the canvas very flexibly. And what you see in that moment is what you'll get on your published website. Just ensure that what you bring in, you then go through tablet and mobile breakpoints and ensure that the layout still works for those smaller screen sizes. If you're hiring a designer or developer, the real magic is in the handover. The site doesn't feel mysterious. You can see how it's structured, you can edit the content, and if you need to hire someone else or they need to step in later, the learning curve is dramatically lower. Now, this matters because most business websites will be passed between people in a team or might go from one developer to another, so it really shouldn't feel like a black box. It should feel like a system that you own and understand. So once you've chosen your platform, the next step is choosing your build approach. Now, there are 3 realistic and sensible routes for most founders and business owners. The first route is template-led. This means starting with a high-quality, responsive template and replacing the content with your own. This is not taking shortcuts. Templates are essentially pre-solved layout problems. If your goal is speed, scalability, and a clean, professional presence, this is often the smartest option. The second route is building from scratch using a visual builder. This gives you more control over structure and branding, but it requires more thought and much more planning. Now, this approach works really well if you've got a clear brand or specific requirements, or perhaps a long-term vision for how the site will evolve. The third route is hiring a professional. In this scenario, your role is not to design or build, but to prepare. The success of a hired project depends far more on clarity than creativity. The clearer you are about your audience, goals, and the content, the smoother the process will be. Whichever route you choose, preparation is the key difference between a calm build and a stressful one. Before you open any website builder, you should be clear on what your website actually needs to do. A business website in 2026 is not an online brochure, it's a communication tool. It should answer questions quickly, guide users confidently, and reduce friction at every step. Start by defining who the site is for and be specific. Not everyone, not anyone who needs this particular service. Think about the actual person landing on the site. What are they worried about? What are they trying to achieve? What would success look like to them? Next, define the primary action that you want them to take. This might be booking a call, making a purchase, joining a mailing list, or simply understanding your offer. Your website should be designed around making that action feel obvious and low effort. Now let's talk about content, because this is where responsive design really begins. Responsiveness starts with content structure, not visuals. Content should be written in sections, not essays. Each section should answer one question at a time and earn the right for the visitor to keep scrolling. A strong section usually consists of a clear headline, a short supporting explanation, and a next step. And that next step might be a button, a link, or simply the promise of what comes next. This modular approach makes your site build much easier to read, easier to design, and dramatically easier to adapt across those different screen sizes. Nowadays, people skim more than ever. They scroll with intent, not curiosity. Someone should be able to understand your value just by reading the headlines on your page. If your site works like that, responsiveness becomes far simpler because the content naturally rearranges itself without losing meaning. When you move into the build phase, responsiveness should be considered constantly, not just added in at the end. In tools like Wix Studio, you'll work with breakpoints, typically desktop, tablet, and mobile. The key thing to understand is that you're refining one system, not creating 3 separate websites. Desktop layouts can afford width, multiple columns, and visual breathing room. Tablet often needs simplification, and mobile demands prioritization. Not everything that appears on desktop needs equal importance on mobile. Sometimes elements need to stack vertically, sometimes spacing needs to increase, sometimes content needs to be reordered. Typography deserves special attention. Text that looks elegant on desktop can become unreadable on mobile if it's not correctly adjusted. Font size, line length, and spacing all matter. A responsive site feels calm because nothing feels cramped or overwhelming regardless of screen size. Images and media are another critical piece. In 2026, performance is inseparable from responsiveness. A site that looks good but loads slowly is not responsive in any meaningful sense. Large, unoptimized sites are one of the biggest causes of poor mobile experiences. So make sure that you use images intentionally, optimize them properly, and avoid visual clutter that doesn't support the message. Clarity and speed will outperform visual complexity almost every time. Interaction design also matters more than people realize. Buttons, links, and forms must be easy to use on touchscreens. Tap target should be generous, forms should be short and simple, navigation should feel obvious. A responsive website respects the user's context and limitations. If you're hiring a designer or developer, this is where Wix Studio genuinely stands out. The way projects are structured, named, and handed over makes ongoing management far less intimidating for business owners. You can update content without fear, you can understand how pages are built, and if your business evolves, your site can evolve with it. This clarity at Handover is not a bonus feature, it's essential for businesses, and especially for businesses that change. Offers change, teams change, your website should support that reality, not resist it or stand in its way. Testing should be continuous. Don't wait until launch day to check mobile. Switch between breakpoints constantly as you build. Scroll your site the way a customer would and ask simple questions. Does this make sense quickly? Is anything hard to tap? Does this feel cluttered, or does this feel calm? Finally, it's important to understand that a responsive website is never finished. Launch is far from the end, it's the beginning. The best websites in 2026 are iterative. They improve based on real usage, feedback, and data. So choosing a platform that makes that iteration easy is one of the smartest long-term decisions that you can make. To bring this all together, building a responsive website is about reducing friction and not adding any more complexity than you need. Choosing a professional tool that supports both DIY builds and expert workflows. Pick an approach that matches your time, budget, and confidence. Prepare your content before worrying about design. Treat responsiveness as a foundation, not an afterthought, and prioritize clarity over cleverness. If you're a founder or business owner, the most important takeaway is this. You don't need to be technical to own a professional, responsive website. You just need a clear process and a platform that respects both the people who build the websites and the people who run businesses. If this video helped to bring clarity to what can feel like an incredibly overwhelming topic, then please do make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. If you're a founder, business owner, or creator, this channel is designed specifically to help you launch and grow and scale online with success. I'll see you in the next video.